he says, man cannot fully find himself except through the sincere gift of himself. So we actually can't fully find ourselves until we've given ourselves away, until we've poured ourselves out.
People of Creston City, people of everywhere around the world, this is David Christopher Pacheco.
Hi, my name is Kimmy.
My name is Arthur Ortiz. Been in Denver since 1973.
Okay, so let's just talk in circles for a little bit.
Just talk in circles, just shoot the breeze a little.
Yeah.
You know, they see beyond what I look like. They see what my actions are and say, hey, that is a good person.
A lot of people say home is where the heart is, but my heart's in many places. It's just I don't know where home is.
Welcome back to Homeless But Human. Here with you today is Blake.
And here with you today is Shayla.
We have something different for you these next 3 episodes, as we are going to do a 3-part series with the same guest. We actually have Sam, the homeless outreach director, who oversees our homeless ministry in both Denver and Philly, joining us and really sharing with us so much wisdom.
Yeah, Sam is actually, we're going to be talking today about the idea of discussing next steps in relationships. You know, our missionaries are oftentimes faced with the idea of going deeper or calling higher in relationships. And we're very thankful and excited to have Sam to dive into this with us. Welcome, Sam.
Welcome, Sam.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Well, with that, Sam also gets to lead a lot of our trainings for our missionaries, especially during orientation week. Training on homeless outreach, training on different situations for the streets, and then also taking a stab at trainings on relationships and things like that. So Sam, actually, we brought him on today to talk about one of these topics that he's passionate about, and that I've honestly never really I've never delved into myself. So I'm excited to discuss this on podcast today as well. So Sam, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what we will be talking about today?
Yeah, this is a conversation we have with the missionaries during our summit week in January, where we bring the 2 communities together and go over how ministry's been throughout the year, some of the challenges that we've faced, anything that we've learned, and then kind of consider where our friendships are and discern the next steps that God might be calling us to bring the friendships that they've built up over the last 4 years.
The friendships with the homeless and those on the street, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And why do you think this is not only important, but important like halfway through the year?
Yeah. I would say all ministries have their strengths, right? And the things that they lean into. We at Christ in the City, we're really good at getting to know people on a personal level, helping them feel comfortable, helping their gifts to come out, their personalities to come out, and really learning who they are. We emphasize that quite a bit at the beginning of the year, even so much as we'll even kind of just discourage them going too quickly into challenging their friends or quote unquote preaching to them, just to really build up the friendship. We really emphasize that. But then we get to a point in the friendship where we're asking, what is the horizon? Where are we going in this relationship? Where is this person going? And it's time to kind of ask those critical questions and maybe make a pivot in the momentum of the relationship. So, the friendship might be fine. They might share a lot of inside jokes. They might get along, have some common themes of conversation. But there's this sense that the relationship is kind of slowed down a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe run out of steam. You've talked about all the things that you can think of.
The small talk, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And then it's just like every time they go out on the street, it's like the same thing. They sit down for an hour with this person, they talk about the same things for the 12th time. And I think the missionaries really start to ask, why are we out here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. As a former missionary, I remember it's providential. This happens in January, and it's also planned in January, which Sam mentioned, because I remember my time on the streets, and you have a lot of momentum, a lot of energy on the streets, meeting the homeless, loving them. The patience is just there for some reason that first semester. It's almost like your own energy can carry you.
Yeah.
And around that December, January time, you really start asking the Lord in prayer and also asking yourself, like, what am I doing? right? Like Sam mentioned, it's like we've talked to this guy almost every day this year, and nothing seems to have changed externally.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the reason Sam through this almost convinces us, no, something has changed and you're ready to continue building on that. So that's what if I would have had this as a missionary, that would have been so helpful. Those months of January where you're like, my gosh, I have another 6 months of this and it is, I'm just not doing anything. Cause we like to do,
Yeah.
right? We love to do, but there's this reality of being, and this kind of helps you to combine them in a wholly spiritual way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I also think we can think of some friendships of our own in just our private lives, right? Where we get together with them, we kind of do the same things, have the same conversations, but we have this sense that God is calling us to something more. There's a sense of maybe virtue that needs to be pursued, or a horizon that hasn't quite been clear to us. And so I think a lot of this could be really relevant to even our friendships off the streets as well.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, how many times have we come to that with maybe even with like a coworker, or maybe even with, people in your everyday life that you do have the same conversation over and over.
Oh, yeah.
With
Family, like just loose friends, deep friends. You know, we all hit that point where it's like, where's this relationship going? And I love the realities of, Sam, what you're presenting on. So you've kind of broken it up into two different like options with the next steps in a friendship. Would you discuss those distinctions and make them clear to us?
Yeah. So we get to the point where we know that there's something more substantial needed in the friendship or the relationship. And it's time to consider taking a step maybe in a more intentional direction when we're together. Like, I'm being more intentional about our time together. And so the distinction that we've made about these two things is the friendship could either go deeper or it could be called higher. Deeper or higher, which direction? And so I think what we want to do today is describe what we mean by what does it look like to go deeper into the friendship, or what does it look like to say this friendship can be elevated, it can be taken higher.
So deeper, start with that one. What's that?
Yeah, as just sort of an intro here, we can understand deeper as like a deeper dive into the self. Understanding like who I am. Why am I the way that I am? Mm-hmm. Have I explored that? Have I come to terms with that? It's getting to know this person and their story really well. Do I, the friends that I do have, do I know their history, where they're from, what they did growing up, the significant moments in their life? There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, there's hours of conversation there. Those moments have formed the person that's before me. So it's knowing their story. I also think it's about recognizing our own strengths, our weaknesses. What are my preferences? Do I know myself? Do I have a sense of my history, my needs? And I think also a process of like growing in self-acceptance. I think we can all think of periods in our life where we grew in a sense of self-acceptance. Yeah. For me, it was in seminary. It was kind of a quiet 2 years where there's a lot of interiority and a lot of spiritual direction and people investing in me in a way that I really came to know myself and accept that who God made me to be, even the parts that I didn't like so much. Mm-hmm. And so this is that aspect of going deeper into the friendship, a deeper dive into the self, and specifically the person in front of me. So having conversations and presenting opportunities that will help the other person go deeper.
Yeah, so it's like this reality of like, okay, I know them at this surface level, and even I may know them 2 floors down, but the depths of the human soul, right? The depths of a story, you can just have more details and more details and more details, right? It's like we know those people in our life who we know a lot about, and immediately when we think of that person, if they know that much about us too, it's one of those where it's like, ooh, I connect with them. I feel a bond with them.
Yeah.
Right? Like this, it's a reality of like the more, you can't love who you don't know. right? We talk about that with the
Yeah.
streets. You can't love who you don't know.
Yep.
And the more you know someone, the easier it is to love them. But also, not just like an effort wise, it's like, yeah, you know their preferences. You know what they like. You know what they don't like. You know what's hard for them, what's not hard for them. I like that first point of like that deeper. Like, yeah, we're going to learn more about them. And my other thought, as you said that same, is that self-acceptance. We always talk about this of like, we all know we're broken, right? It's not too hard to figure out in what ways we're broken. But man, accepting that that's part of our story and, you know, the thorn in our side or the cross we're called to bear, brutal. That one for me is just brutal. And I've seen it in so many.
Mm-hmm. I also like that, and maybe you can talk more about this, but talking about going deeper in relationship together. So it's a deeper, you kind of said like a deeper dive into yourself and into the person in front of you. And hopefully with like, even with the missionaries on the streets and with our listeners and their relationships, that they can get to know people better in a way that allows them to unfold themselves. But that also sparks in you, like, you have to give a gift of yourself as well. And I know we say this a lot, but like vulnerability sparks vulnerability. And so just even the beauty of missionaries and us like being able to share our own stories with our friends allows them to go deeper as well. So I don't know if that's like something that you encourage with the missionaries, that like maybe to take it a step deeper, you have to give yourself a little bit deeper or like share more about yourself. Is that like part of the...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The vulnerability begets vulnerability. So if the conversation just stays at this surface level, I'm talking about the weather, I'm talking about what the Broncos did,
The Eagles in Philly, you know, it's
what's
the classic.
That's real
news.
stuff right there.
Yeah.
But trying to like break through that wall and just share at a more personal level. Maybe I just share, I am super tired this morning, or today did not go well, or I'm feeling on top of the world because I had this little victory in this area of my life. And it totally changes the course of the conversation. It's just something more personal that people can relate to instead of just talking about these external topics.
Yeah.
No, it's so good. So good. So then higher, right? Deeper is that more understanding. What is this, you know, calling a relationship higher? What do you mean by this? Like, what is the basis?
Yeah, I think calling the relationship higher is this shift from gazing inward or gazing at each other to looking outward. It's a shift of recognizing like what I currently do, how have I done things in the past, really knowing myself, to what is it that I ought to do? What is the higher call? What is the good in this situation? Not just what are my preferences. Yeah,
not what feels good, but what is the good.
Yeah.
Right. Another way to describe it is like what's the bigger picture in life? Where are we going? And ultimately, where's the good? And I think also like what is God calling me to, or what is God calling this person to? So this is the sense of it's higher because it's somewhere else than where I currently am. It's a look outward, not inward.
Does one come, like, I guess, would deeper come naturally before higher? Like, do you need to know before, I guess, when you're at
is
this
there an
turn
order?
point? Yeah, is there a natural order to either of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think both are good, right? Both are good and necessary, but deeper has to come before higher. You have to know yourself.
Yeah.
You have to own yourself to be able to give yourself away. You have to know yourself in order to be receptive to maybe what God is calling you to. So definitely.
And I can see this on the streets, right? It's like, imagine a missionary walking up the first day, you know, and you meet, or maybe it's the second month and you haven't gone deeper with someone. You don't really know them. You don't know how they ended up on the streets. Maybe you don't know this. And then you say, hey, do you want housing? You know, or, hey, you should cut your addiction. You want to go to AA with me? As opposed to someone who has known them for 8 or 9 months. And saying that after you know them deeper. And I think the wisdom in that, Sam, is just spot on. Right. And but it's interesting because a lot of us don't want to do the work on the deeper. You know, it's like, because the action almost, would you say the action almost comes more in the higher?
Yeah. I mean, the higher could be more pragmatic. It could be for those of us who are more idealistic or have a lot of zeal, we jump right to shooting for the ideals, rather than getting a sense of what's right in front of me or where I am now. This is where reverence comes in for Christ in the City. Reverence is this deep vision of the other. It's a recognition of the essential in the other. And in order to do that, I might have to look again and again and even again at the other or at myself to really reverently see what's really there.
Yeah.
And that takes work. That takes sacrifice, dedication,
and effort. Yeah.
Effort, discipline,
patience.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yep. Oh yeah. And I think we have so many examples of that at Christ in the City. Trish, who is highlighted on our documentary, I've known her. I met her when I was a missionary in my second year. 7 years ago, I met Trish. And it took 7 years of Christ in the City knowing her to encourage her to get housing and for her to receive that encouragement. Mm-hmm. Darn right, we talked about it. I think I talked about it with her. Well, at least if I didn't, someone did along those lines.
Yeah.
And it's like 7 years because she knew that we knew her. She was convinced of that, right? It wasn't some flippant, hey, Trish, you want to get into housing now? It was like, Trish, I know where you've been on this journey. Is now the time, and I love that. Without the deeper, the higher is not as substantial.
Yep.
There's something to it there too, that when another person does know your struggle, like them even offering a higher call or like offering something higher has more weight in your life because you're like, oh no, you actually do get me. I've told you what I've been through, my life experiences, where I've been, what I've done. And yet you still see like that I can go up or that I can do something better. You see something in me that maybe I don't see in myself right now, but you also know me. So I trust that. And so I think that that's really like, it just makes sense, even logically, like to have that trust, that relationship built first, to go deeper first, and then to call higher, because that's what makes the most sense, even in, just in basic relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, we've been talking at the level of ideas, it's a little abstract right now. I have maybe some flesh to put on this, some phrases that we can discuss that will help better like distinguish what we mean by deeper and higher.
Let's dive into it.
Cool. Well, the first one would be the difference between self-knowledge versus knowledge of others. What are my needs? What direction do I need to go? That's going deeper in the relationship and helping the other to find that out. Knowledge of others, though, requires maybe just a little bit of kind of getting outside the self, noticing others around me. What are their needs? What matters to them? What challenges are they facing?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of our friends on the street, it can be so easy to be so focused on the self, understandably.
Yeah.
Like I have a lot of needs, and right now I'm just surviving on the streets. And some of our friends are really unaware of maybe the needs of the missionaries or the needs of their neighbor and the tenant next door. So I think a distinction between knowing my needs and then knowing the person next to me. So knowledge of self versus knowledge of others. Mm-hmm. Okay. The second one we could describe as finding oneself. That's going deeper versus pouring oneself out. And again, there's beauty to both these, right? To find oneself. We know that Thomas Merton a lot of the time talks about how to be a saint is to become myself, is to become the person that God made me to be. Now, on the other hand, one of our patrons, John Paul II, he's got this quote. He says, "Man cannot fully find himself except through the sincere gift of himself." So we actually can't fully find ourselves until we've given ourselves away, until we've poured ourselves out. So we see there is kind of an order to these, but they're not mutually exclusive, right? There's a dynamic where they're both happening at the same time.
Yes, like the deeper and then the higher. Mm-hmm. Right, that's so good. Finding versus pouring out. Yeah, it's that internal versus external. You know, I love that.
I would say the third distinction that we make is the fulfillment of desires versus pursuing the highest good.
Ooh, that's hard.
So, you know, we all have dreams and aspirations for things that we desire. And it's a really good sign when we're in touch with those and making them happen and bringing them up. And I even think in other relationships like marriage, right? Like what are my desires? What do I want for my household? Or what do I desire in our relationship? Or where do I want my career to go? Things like that. And where do we want our career to go? So the knowledge of these things and recognition of them is like super good. And there is something super satisfying about helping to bring our homeless friends to kind of like discover these desires that they have and like these aspirations and then like helping them fulfill them. So we'll like take our friends to like go fishing, you know, cause in the mountains, cause that has been a dream of theirs, or they, you know, just really have a passion for fishing that they kind of forgot about. And we go and there's something that comes alive in them.
Yeah.
Those human things, right?
Mm-hmm. Or, you know, bringing somebody to their favorite restaurant that can just make their year.
Or celebrating their birthday, right? Like those things that are so small or even so real and human, right? That add to that life and that, oh, I love it.
Yep. So, I mean, that's what going deeper can look like. And, you know, if I feel like I'm spinning tires or this relationship has kind of run out of steam, to kind of look at the person and really try to discover what are the things that they like to do. What are their deeper inclinations and desires, so that I can maybe make those happen. Yeah. This would also include maybe like diving into their experience of things or their perspectives on the world, finding out what they do or don't like. So missionaries have an ear for these things. It's the idea of reverence. It's really understanding the other person. That's one mode of going deeper. But a different trajectory would be aiming at something even higher or greater than my desires. So instead of focusing on what I want, my preferences, which are not bad.
No, needed, right? But if we only all focused on our preferences, we'd have a pretty selfish society.
Right.
You know, and no one would ever help each other.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of that, like what does God want for this person? What's the highest good in this moment? Not just the good that I know maybe excites this person. So
So do you have any like examples of that? Like maybe even I was just thinking, like, instead of maybe taking them fishing, we help take them to their housing appointment that they have missed 4 times in a row.
Yeah, or they've been putting off, you know.
Yep. Yeah, things like that. I think one example would be, let's say I have a friend who loves getting taken to McDonald's for coffee, and then they always get their cheeseburger, and it's great. And everybody lights up when we take this McDonald's run. Instead of continually going to McDonald's, maybe I have a vision for this person. Like maybe it's time for this person to like invite them to give. So maybe instead of McDonald's, I'll suggest like, I've really been wanting to go to Caribou Coffee, and they have this new drink, and I would love to take you there. I know you like McDonald's, but can we go here? And right, so you're not gonna get that excitement of going to the McDonald's again with that same person, but maybe they're being invited into kind of a surrender of their preferences.
Sure.
And it's a baby step, but it's a step outward.
Yeah.
Rather than fulfilling of their desires.
And when we look at the homeless, I mean, these are, yes, and this is where it's like many people say, well, they're victims, they're this, that, or the other. At the same time, we know we're not made to stay there. Ever. Like that is never where we're supposed to stay. And many of their desires, like Sam mentioned, it's like they have not been met. So meeting those and letting them see like you have desires, it's good. It's okay to have preferences. But then if we just live in those, what a selfish, insulated world, right? And everyone around us is like bending over for that desire. But what do we know about relationship? It's mutual. So you can't have a relationship if we're only doing the thing one party likes, you know? And it's like, if we're really trying to call this friendship higher, right? It's already deeper, but it's only a one-sided deeper.
Yeah.
Right. I love this like general progression, right? But it's like, it must come first. You can't just say on your second time seeing them, hey, so I don't really care where you like to go, but we're going to go where I want to go.
Yeah.
What an awful relationship that would be.
Yep.
But saying, hey, I know we've gone to McDonald's, or I know your preference we've done the last 4 or 5 times. Would you mind if we go to where I like? That allows them to get out. And like Sam said, the higher good, right? Calling higher to these things that we know they're going to get a lot of fulfillment too. It's not just selfish. They will get so much out of seeing they can be a gift to another as well, which again, how many of our friends on the street have been able to see that or do that? You know, they haven't had much to give, and we're just almost like giving them, you may say a layup here, but it's a great layup, right? One where it's like they're going to get to see the joy in that and also have to sacrifice. I like that a lot. And it's so real. I mean, we see this in society. So many public things are going back to just classic Catholic Church doctrine of like John Paul II says, you only find yourself through a sincere gift of yourself. Well, you have to know yourself first, and then you have to give yourself. I love that.
Yep.
Deeper versus higher.
Yep. And as you're talking, I was thinking, you know, this kind of thing happens even in our own families, right? Like maybe there's like a particular child or, you know, grandson or whatever that it's just so awesome and life-giving to find out what they like and to provide it and make those things happen, make their dreams happen. And that's good. But there's also maybe even a higher call than just getting them what they want. It's a sense that I'm also willing to give for other people's wants. So that could look like stepping outside of the routine of kind of providing for whatever this child wants. And like, we're actually going to do this other thing. And it's an invitation for them to kind of surrender their own desires for the greater desire.
We hear those things at birthdays and Christmases every year, right? The little kid who's like, I don't want gifts, I want to give them away. And that kid is so pleased and so like fulfilled, and they have no idea the higher reasoning why yet.
Yeah.
But we see that beauty, and as a society, we even see it. We almost applaud it, right? We don't have headlines left and right of local kid gets everything he asked for. You know, it's like, no, it's like local kid saw a way to give more than he was just receiving. And I think with children, it's so easy. Lord was so wise in guiding us to that.
That even reminded me of actually one of our friends who's now in housing, Chuck. He was also in our documentary. But Chuck is like one of the most generous people I've ever met. And every time we're like, Chuck, we want to see you. We want to like spend time together. He's like, great, come over. I'll make some coffee. We'll have some cookies, or I'll make you dinner. And we go over there and to his apartment now. And he's so generous, but like it is, sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish I could, bring more for you, Chuck. Like maybe I should be bringing dinner over to you. No, like allowing him to make us a dinner or make us a lunch is like so giving of him, and it's giving of yourself as well. Like it's allowing you to maybe receive from that person in front of you. And that is like, that's a gift to them to be able to give something to you. Does that make sense?
No, it's a blessing to be able to give of yourself. Like it reminds me of Saint Therese. In one of her writings, she talked about a sister who they were kind of always competing for to do these charitable things, basically. And at one point, Therese says, I'm going to give her the opportunity to be charitable as a gift to her.
Interesting.
So kind of outdoing each other in charity, but recognizing like it's a good for the person who's giving to give.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Sam, thank you. What beautiful ways we can begin to challenge ourselves, not only in this mission, but in our everyday lives, to just go deeper with every single person we encounter, and just knowing then how to call them higher, remembering what is God calling me to specifically, and then what God is calling that person to do, right? You've given us such good advice, good examples from the streets, and leading each other to the good is so important. So for part 2 of this series, come back and join Sam and Shayla and Blake again as we dive deeper into more ways we can grow and continue to hear Sam's wisdom and what has worked for our missionaries on the streets.
Yeah, and thank you to all of our listeners who tuned in today to this part 1 of 3-part series. We hope that you can join us for the next 2 parts. See you all in a couple weeks.
God bless. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us on Homeless But Human today. In order to keep producing this content for you all, we invite you to consider joining our known and loved monthly giving community. This is one of the most impactful ways that you can join us on mission. Your monthly gift sends missionaries out to the streets day after day and helps us to continue recording and sharing our podcast. It's our vision that every city not only has soup kitchens and shelters, but communities who are committed to helping the homeless know that they have a home in us. And what is home but a small taste of Christ's infinite love? Visit christinthecity.org and make a monthly gift today to join our known and loved community. And if you enjoyed today's episode, do us a favor and go hit subscribe and leave a review. To get more involved with the mission, visit christinthecity.org.